Imagine for a second that it's the year 2050. You are walking through a major Chinese city. The skyline is massive, filled with 30-story concrete towers. But something is wrong. It is quiet, too quiet. Half the windows in those skyscrapers are dark. The schools have been converted into nursing homes. The factories that used to churn out cheap electronics for American consumers are rusting in silence. For 40 years, we have been told a lie. We were told the 21st century belongs to Beijing. We were told the dragon is waking up and that their economy would inevitably crush the United States. But while the world was watching the skyscrapers rise, we missed the termites eating the foundation. What if I told you the Chinese dream isn't being killed by American sanctions or a war over Taiwan, but by simple, brutal arithmetic? We are watching the slow-motion car crash of a superpower. And a stagnant China isn't just a tragedy for them. It is a ticking time bomb for your wallet, your stock portfolio, and global peace. From a demographic cliff that makes the Great Depression look like a picnic to a real estate Ponzi scheme worth $52 trillion, the party is over. Here is exactly why China is finished. Let's start with the absolute mother of all problems. This isn't Western propaganda. It is cold, hard, biological math. To understand why China is facing an existential crisis, we have to go back to 1980. The Chinese Communist Party, terrified of starvation, implemented the one-child policy. At the time, they thought they were playing 4D chess. They stopped people from having kids to focus resources on economic growth. And, strictly speaking, for about 30 years, it worked. But here is the dark humor of centrally planning an economy. Biology always collects the debt. By forcibly stopping a generation from being born, China created an inverted pyramid. Today, we are seeing the rise of the 4-2-1 problem. This is the nightmare scenario, where one working-age adult is expected to support 2 aging parents and 4 aging grandparents. Imagine you are a 25-year-old in Shanghai. You are the sole financial safety net for 6 elderly people. There are no siblings to share the burden. Just you. The scale of this is mind-boggling. By 2050, China is projected to lose roughly 200 million working-age adults. That is like deleting the entire population of Brazil from the workforce overnight. Poof, gone. There is no magical AI robot that can replace the consumption and innovation of 200 million missing young people. But if you think the people problem is bad, wait until you see how they have been paying for everything. If you want to understand why the Chinese economy is currently on life support, you don't need to look at the stock market. You need to look at concrete. Imagine you walk into a dealership to buy a car. The salesman points to an empty parking spot and says, "That'll be $50,000. The car doesn't exist yet, but if you pay me the full price right now, I promise to build it in 2 years." You would laugh and walk out, right? Well, in China, this is how almost everyone bought a home for the last 20 years. It is called the pre-sales model, and it is the fuel for the largest asset bubble in human history. Because the Chinese stock market is notoriously rigged and capital controls make it illegal to move money out of the country, real estate became the only safe place to store wealth. The result? Chinese households hold roughly 70% of their wealth in property. In the US, it is closer to 30%. This created a monster. Developers became the largest in the world by playing a dangerous game. They would take your money for an unbuilt apartment, use that cash to buy more land, take out massive loans, and start the cycle all over again. They were effectively running a Ponzi scheme disguised as a construction business. At its peak, the Chinese real estate sector accounted for roughly 30% of the country's entire GDP. The total value was estimated at $52 trillion. That is more than the US bond market, stock market, and real estate market combined at certain points. But in 2020, the music stopped. The government tried to deflate the bubble, but instead, they popped it with a needle. Developers collapsed, leaving millions of homes unfinished. We are talking about 65 to 90 million empty apartment units across China. That is enough to house the entire population of Germany. These are the infamous ghost cities. Miles and miles of high-rise towers where the only residents are wind and dust. When 70% of your people's wealth is tied up in an asset that is rapidly losing value, you have broken the social contract. You have erased the retirement savings of an entire generation. And this financial black hole is sucking the life out of the rest of the economy, leading directly to a phenomenon that is terrifying the government more than any American aircraft carrier ever could. If the real estate crisis is the hardware failure of the Chinese economy, what we are about to discuss is the software crash. It is a psychological rebellion that is terrifying the Communist Party more than any trade war. To understand this, you have to learn a new phrase: let it rot. Imagine you are a 22-year-old graduate in Beijing. You spent your life studying 12 hours a day, surviving the most brutal exams on earth, expecting the prosperous future you were promised. Instead, you enter a job market with record youth unemployment and housing prices that are 40 times your annual salary. So, the youth did something the party didn't expect. They sat down. First, it was lying flat, doing the bare minimum to survive. But now, it has evolved into letting it rot. It comes from basketball terminology. When a team is losing so badly there is no chance of winning, they stop trying and let the clock run out. Millions of young Chinese have decided they are living in garbage time. We are seeing viral trends of zombie-style graduation photos, where students pose face down on the ground looking like corpses. We see the rise of full-time children, adults who move back in with their parents and get paid a monthly allowance just to be a son or daughter because they can't find a job. You cannot build a superpower when your smartest minds decide the game is rigged and quit playing. But while the kids are lying flat, the local governments are drowning. If you think the real estate crash is bad, wait until you meet its evil twin, the hidden debt mountain. For years, Chinese cities played a shell game. Since they couldn't collect enough taxes, they created shadow companies to borrow billions of dollars to build shiny bridges, subways, and museums that generate zero profit. They paid off the old loans by selling more land. But remember, the land market just collapsed. Now, we are staring at a debt pile estimated between $9 and $13 trillion. That is nearly half the United States national debt, accumulated in just a few years, hidden off the books. This isn't just numbers on a screen. It is causing a breakdown of civil society. In some cities, streetlights are turned off to save electricity. Bus drivers aren't getting paid. Teachers in wealthy provinces have been asked to return bonuses they earned years ago. When the garbage doesn't get picked up and the police don't get paid, the regime's control starts to slip. Beijing is paralyzed. They can't spend money to save the economy because they are broke. And just when you think it can't get worse, the United States decided to kick the ladder out from under them. On October 7, 2022, the U.S. dropped a nuclear bomb on China. There was no explosion, just a document released by the Bureau of Industry and Security. This was the start of the Silicon Curtain. Here is the reality of the 21st century. Computation is power. AI, hypersonic missiles, and surveillance systems all run on advanced semiconductors. China consumes 40% of the world's chips, but they produce almost none of the cutting-edge ones. They are addicted to Western technology. The Biden administration changed the strategy from competition to strangulation. They banned the sale of advanced AI chips to China. They banned the machines needed to make those chips. And in a masterstroke, they banned U.S. persons from helping Chinese factories. Overnight, hundreds of high-level engineers, the brains of the Chinese chip industry, had to choose. Quit your job immediately or lose your U.S. citizenship. They quit. This trapped China in the technological past. Without these chips, China cannot train the massive AI models needed to dominate the future. Their autonomous weapons become dumber. Their surveillance state becomes less effective. They are stuck trying to reinvent the wheel while the rest of the world invents the flying car. And what happens when the wealthy elite in China see this writing on the wall? They don't just retire, they run. There is a new field of study in China. It isn't taught in universities, but whispered in private dinner clubs. It is called rungshu, literally, runology. It is the art and science of escaping the country with your wealth before the doors close. Right now, China is bleeding millionaires faster than Russia, India, or anywhere else on Earth. Why? Because the unspoken deal is broken. It used to be, make money, but shut up about politics. Now, the deal is, we can take your money and your freedom whenever we feel like it. So, the rich are using every trick in the book, smurfing cash through friends, buying overpriced art to auction offshore, using the crypto underground, or the classic Macau shuffle in casinos. But it's not just the billionaires. We are seeing regular middle-class teachers and office workers flying to Ecuador and walking through the dangerous Darien Gap jungle just to reach the US border. They are voting with their feet, and their feet are saying the dream is dead. This exodus locks China into the middle-income trap. They are getting old before they get rich. They have just enough wealth to have high costs, but not enough innovation to dominate high-tech industries. And historically, when an authoritarian regime realizes it can no longer deliver capability or growth, it needs a new source of legitimacy. It needs a distraction. It needs a war. This brings us to the most dangerous place on Earth, Taiwan. History teaches us a bloody lesson. Rising powers are peaceful, but declining powers are violent. Germany in 1914, Japan in 1941. They didn't attack because they felt strong. They attacked because they felt their window of opportunity was closing. Xi Jinping is looking at a dashboard flashing red. He sees his population collapsing, his economy rotting, and the US cutting off his technology. He knows that in 10 years, China will be weaker than it is today. This creates a use it or lose it mentality. A stagnant, wounded China is dangerous because it is unpredictable. If the economy completely collapses, an invasion of Taiwan becomes the ultimate drug to whip up nationalist fervor and distract the angry masses. And if that happens, it breaks the global supply chain instantly. No new phones, no new cars, and a global depression that makes 1929 look like a mild recession. We have arrived at the end of the Chinese dream. The facade is shiny, the trains are fast, and the skylines are neon, but the foundation is sand. So, here are the 3 things you need to take away from this. 1. The math always wins. You can censor the internet and jail dissidents, but you cannot jail arithmetic. The demographics ensure the decline. 2. The social contract is broken. It shifted from "we rule, you get rich" to "we rule, you suffer." 3. This affects you. A wounded giant doesn't die quietly. It thrashes. The era of cheap goods and relative peace is over. Now I want to hear from you. Seriously, go to the comments right now and tell me, if you were in charge of a collapsing superpower, would you accept the decline, or would you start a war to stay in power? I'll be reading the best theories. If you want to survive the economic shift that is coming, make sure you are subscribed. You do not want to miss what we are covering next. Class dismissed. If you want to survive the economic shift that is coming, make sure you are subscribed. You do not want to miss what we are covering next. Class dismissed.